Hey guys, beautiful people out there. I hope you're enjoying the summit. The event has been so far a wild ride. And today, right now, we're jumping in with Jason Christoff. I can't think of a more fitting fellow to have on at this point of time to go deep into really the control structure of our minds and how, even though I know most of you in the summit, attendee wise, are consider ourselves to be awake. I think it's more important than ever for us to realize, even though how consciously awake we are still pitted against the subconscious and the control mechanisms that are constantly tweaking those gears, unbeknownst to us, and to have better awareness about that so that we can then do the work to ensure that we aren't being manipulated by those forces that are pulling the strings at this moment, which we are uncovering constantly and really unveiling in this summit. But of course, as we know, the summit's also all about solutions. So while we dive into the darkness to uncover and help that unfoldment come forward for us so we can understand what we're up against, of course, then it's all about what are we going to do now to ensure that that paradigm is sloughing off as the old scab, right? Into this way as we continue on this way in these new parallel systems of community, collaboration, cooperation. And in order to do that, though, we as individuals need to be as solid as we can. So before the group can really be empowered, each individual needs to be empowered. And in doing that, we need to really understand what we're up against. So Jason, welcome. So happy to have you at in the event. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Mike. You're doing a lot of good work. I'm pleased with all the speakers. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure, man. And, like I said, couldn't be a more fitting guest right now than yourself because you've really been taking on the establishment with your warrior memes that have been gotten you kicked off Instagram a few times and the other legacy social media platforms. We know the power of the meme, right? It can really extend across boundaries and barriers of thought as a visual representation of sort of the prism of thought forms that can extend out and go everywhere. And you've been such a master at doing that. But yeah, I just want to say how much we appreciate you and the work that you've been doing because I think you've really been waking up a lot of people. So yeah, where do you want to go today? How do you want to start this off?
Well, I think we only have 45 minutes, right? So
Yeah.
I think what we should do is try to focus on the subconscious mind because this is the part of the mind not many people understand fully. And I think if we could dedicate a good amount of time to trying to explain how this part of the mind works, it'll help people defend themselves from the brainwashing, the mind control, and the hypnosis that is so frequent in our environment today. People really don't see it. So the subconscious is the part of the mind that the media hacks on a regular basis. And it's a very loving part of the mind. That's, the real cool foundation of it. It loves us. It wants us to be safe. It wants us to be secure. It wants us to survive. But that function is accomplished in a very odd way that people really need to wrap their head around. This subconscious part of the mind controls 94 to 97% of our behavior. And again, it loves us, wants us to be safe and survive and bond with the herd. It has a very unique modality by which it accomplishes that. So it looks out through your eyes and it literally records. I'm just going to grab a piece of paper here as a prop. It records every millisecond or megapixel of your entire life, and then it sorts that list for repetition. Repetition is very, very important to your survival. The human behavior is very simple. Humans, like other humans that think, act, and talk like they do. So this list is sorted by repetition in order to assess what the tribe is thinking, what the tribe is doing, and how the tribe is behaving. And this list is literally sort of put into a script format. It's pushed up into our behavioral pathways, almost sort of ripped out like a cash register receipt. And this becomes our behavior. And a lot of people aren't really understanding that. So Hacking this part of the mind, 80% of hacking this is repetitive content, because the people who rule us, we'll call them the big club, they understand that basically the repetitive content influences our subconscious mind, and then the subconscious literally forces us to act this out in an attempt to bond with the tribe in order to increase our survivability. And although theoretically that might sound sort of fantastical, I'll give you a very good example. In 2001, there was a movie called Gone in 60 Seconds, and it was with Angelina Jolie and Nicolas Cage. I don't know if you remember it. I'm not too sure how old you are.
I do. I was actually graduating from film school at that time, and I wouldn't say that would really make the mark of us watching that in school, but yes, I do remember that movie.
And it was very repetitive in one very particular way about car theft. I mean, Nicolas Cage was the hero coming out of retirement. He was an ex, you know, car thief, and he had to
Yeah,
steal 100 cars in one night to
that's right.
basically get his brother out of trouble.
Yeah.
So this part of the brain as well doesn't know the difference between real life, screen time, and imagined thought. So when this movie was released in Burnaby, BC, Canada, car theft went up 70% in the first 4 days alone, and police stations all around the world were reporting the same. What's going on is that the people who rule us know what's on the screen in the day will be on the street in the evening, because of how this part of the brain is easily hacked by repetitive content. When you are sitting in the theater and watching Gone in 60 Seconds, this part of the brain, which loves you and wants you to be safe, is always downloading maybe the new tribe you're in, the new town, the new city, and it doesn't know that the screen isn't real life. It's just doing what it does. It's like a machine, it's like a blender. You just press the button, the machinery does the rest. And it would have believed the subconscious would have believed you're in a car theft tribe, and therefore stealing or thieving cars allows you to bond more firmly with those particular tribesmen in that particular village. And then this all happens outside your conscious awareness, where the people literally get up, and this is what hypnosis is about. All hypnotists hack the subconscious mind in this way, and the people would get up and start stealing cars. Not everybody, but some people. So this is, if you were to interview people inside the theater and say, "Do you think a movie about car theft can actually get you up off your seat when the movie's over and have you go steal cars?" Of course, everybody would say no, unless I was in the theater, and I'd be very careful about what repetitive content I'm going to let in my subconscious mind. But this is the sort of technology, the base technology by which the people in Hollywood and the media, they're going into our subconscious, and they're able to understand this function. We're not understanding it, and they're making us behave in ways that are actually detrimental to our lifespan, our quality of life, our happiness, our success, our evolution, and like our progress. And the average person has to understand that the TV and the movie screen were invented in, well, the TV was invented in the early 1920s, maybe a little bit before that. And it was invented as a military weapon. The average person does not know any of this. This TV technology was invented as a military weapon to control the repetitive content entering the subconscious pathway, therefore having full control of the public who watches it. And if you would have had a government deliver these for free, it would have been as obvious as grabbing someone on a Friday night and pouring wine down their throat. There has to be that sort of faux freedom. So people go out and grab these modalities of slavery without them being aware that the TV was never there to entertain or inform you. It was there
Mhm.
to entrain you. It was there to misinform you. And uh, like I said, if they would have gave it away
Yeah.
and delivered for free, it would have been obvious. Now, this technology of using repetitive content and some other modalities of subconscious mind control and hypnotism, this didn't just start with the TV. This is very old. The TV came later. This original hacking of the subconscious was mastered by a small group, and I don't think Michael Tessarian or David Whitehead are at the event, but David Whitehead just made a very good documentary called The Cult of the Medics, which goes back to this ancient cult that were the original country from where they came was called Media. And this is where Azerbaijan or Iran
Mhm.
is today. And this group mastered this type of subconscious mind control and would invite other kings and queens from around the Mediterranean to come visit them so they could be versed in this expertise of controlling your population through repetitive based mind control. There's other techniques you can use as well, but this is where this modality of control came from the ancient. That's where we get our name media from, obviously. So
Wow, that's really fascinating. I haven't heard that before. And it is interesting too that 1920s, the television. I didn't know it was that early. That is around the time of Edward Bernays, who I always think of when we're talking about propaganda. And I mean, here's a quote from him: "We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of." And they're pulling those strings, man. But that's fascinating research. That is very cool and makes a lot of sense, Jason.
yeah, and if you go watch David Whitehead's documentary, The Cult of Medics, you're going to get a good idea of who this group is. And you can see other real life examples. Like, for example, in the 80s, there was a show called, I think it was called The Cosby Show with Bill Cosby. And he was an African American medical doctor, and his wife Claire was an African American lawyer. And during the 9-year run of the show, African American enrollment went up 19% in law school and in medical school. And that was called the Cosby Effect by Dr. Jerry Croth out of Santa
Mhm.
Clara University in California. And for what I call our human farmers, that was too much of a positive effect on a community that they usually target for negative effects. So
Hmm.
they basically canceled the Cosby Show at the height of its popularity, at the height of its positive impact on the Black community. And then they started to use that repetitive content out of media to basically reverse the
So
trend.
we went from Cosby Show to Martin.
Well, I don't know. I can imagine what that show was, but Jerry Croth calls the fall after the Cosby Show. He calls it the Lil Wayne effect,
Mhm.
because the Black community was drowned in negative repetitive content, which of course is acted out outside the people's conscious awareness. And there's so many examples of this sort of subconscious mind control. I think the best thing for your audience to do would go to YouTube and look up Justin Williams. I'm not too sure if you know Justin Williams. He's from California. Again, he's a great magician and had his own show on Netflix. And he has a clip on YouTube called Influencing the Influencers. So if you want to see this part of the brain hacked in a very brilliant way, brings on three very cocky teenagers, influencers that have millions and millions of followers, and Justin Williams puts himself in a position where they go to a place. I'm not too sure if you're aware of this place where they can take selfies of themselves. I didn't even know there were businesses like this, but in California, I guess there's places where you can go
Oh yeah.
take selfies of yourself. And he puts himself out as someone who wants to learn the art of influencing. And so he keeps going over some of his posts and some of his pictures. And what they don't know is that Justin Williams is using the art of repetitive mind control, and then he sends them off into this business where you take selfies, and then they have to pick from all the selfies they took. He says, pick your best one. And they all pick the same shot. And they picked the same shot because he literally dumped in what he wanted them to do through the hacking of their subconscious mind as he was talking to them and acting like a very naive moron in the act of influencing. He was programming them with repetitive content, and they did exactly what he programmed into their subconscious minds through repetitive content. And at the end, he says, I wasn't here to take a lesson in influencing, I was here to give it.
Wow. And one other great example going back to Cosby, of course, is the hip hop subculture that came out of a real natural flow of subversion from, the need to face, authority in the 80s and 90s where it was legitimate art form. And then, of course, that was co opted into pop music. And now the Lil Wayne effect we see of course, in modern day, quote unquote, hip hop, which is just commercialized mind controlling propaganda through pop music. I mean, the music industry obviously is a major force for that. And we do have an amazing panel of conscious musicians who are independent and putting out real content where we discuss this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's fascinating to see it's on all angles. It's a 24/7 cycle of repetitive mind control in the mainstream media everywhere we look.
Yeah, and this is very powerful, as they would say in ancient times. This can be white magic, or this can be black magic. Even when the movie Suicide Squad came out, and that's very repetitive imprints, very repetitive imagery and messaging. Suicide actually went up. And why
Wow.
why are these, or like in excess, Suicide Blonde? There is a lot of covert hacking of the subconscious mind in regards to many things. One of which, we were talking last night about the bonus that I've provided in regards to um, this particular event. And I recount that's just one facet. I mean, this sort of attack on people's behaviors operates more like a watch. I mean, there's 150,000 pieces in the average watch, and they all work together to accomplish one goal, which is tell the time. So this attack on humanity has many different cogs in this machine. And whether we have repetitive content in movies like Bad Moms, I mean, this is one sort of exploding genre, and it's exploded over the past 15 years because, again, what's on the screen will be on the street. And you have this attack on the family. So, of course, there's going to be repetitive content about single mothers drinking, partying, leaving their kids here and there. This is all set up. This is, if you go watch this documentary, The Cult of Medics, you will see this is socially engineered. These sort of trends in our society are not happening by coincidence. They're not happening by happenstance. This isn't a misunderstanding of the science. This is a weaponization of psychology, the science of psychology, against the uninformed public, where they're not understanding. They have this very loving part of the mind that tabulates repetitive content and forces us to act it out outside our conscious awareness. And I mean, when it gets to the point where this list is acted out and we end up euthanizing ourselves or hurting ourselves, bankrupting ourselves, or hurting our own health, I've deemed that kamikaze mind control, because it's the same sort of mind control they used to use with kamikaze pilots in the square Tokyo,
Mhm.
Japan, in the late 1930s, where there'd be a lot of positive enforcement, positive adoration, and a lot of repetitive ritual and ceremony around kamikaze pilots in the town square in Tokyo. And that would be seen by the subconscious minds of many teenagers going by, and the subconscious says, hey, according to the top of my list, that's a really safe way to bond with the tribe. And so I'm sure everybody knows what a kamikaze pilot is: driving a loaded fighter jet into a warship. So you end up bonding with the tribe, but you actually end up dying and killing yourself. So
And we
pretty
I
pretty big
yeah.
flaw, pretty big flaw in the program.
And I can see that programming, coming to full, fruition right now in our community with the Jibby Jab, because that is the same exact mentality and messaging, which is I'm doing this for my society, for the good of my brothers and sisters, where I'm literally potentially killing myself. So, yeah, same thing right there.
It's the same thing. And what's the more repetitive the content that's at the top of the list, this is kind of what's called the double stamp system. So whatever's at the top of the list gets stamped as really safe to engage in. And then what's not on the list at all gets stamped as unsafe,
Mhm.
dangerous, and you can weaponize one group against another because in order to please this herd, so the repetitive content denotes where you're going to find safety. And a lot of people, there's more to the programming than I'm even telling. So when you establish where the safe group is according to the repetition on the list, a lot of people who are, controlled through this list mechanism want to put on display the loyalty for the bigger herd. And there's nothing more loyal to gain acceptance or score marks with the bigger tribe than attacking the smaller tribe. And
Mhm.
so the more repetitive the content, the more you can weaponize the people who are under the mind control against another group. It's completely natural. You don't have to do anything except drive the repetitive content into the subconscious. This is, like I said, it's like a machine. No one really cares how the smoothie gets made. Just put all the stuff in the blender and press the button. The machine does the rest. And this is how this particular mechanism works. It's a machine, and the people ruling us, like Bernays and all these other
Soros
Soros
and
and the whole group. I mean, it's
yeah.
pretty obvious that there is a mass group of psychologists. There is a group of psychologists called SAGE in the UK, where they're the directing organization to the UK government's response for the disease issue. But 87% of them are clinical behavioralists, which means they're behavior modification specialists. So why is
Well,
there a group of behavior modification specialists out of maybe the most evil organization in the world called Tavistock Institute?
yep.
Why would they be having their own faction of government and be in full control of the government's response to the disease issue? Is because this is a psychological operation based on uh, this list, this this part of the brain that's trying to love us to safety, but obviously has some faults in it that can be taken advantage of. And if people know about how this part of the mind works, they can protect themselves. When they
Yep.
see repetitive content, it's very important they understand, is this real? Ask some questions. Is this real? Is this going somewhere? They like to use the lanes of traffic technique. They want to get us 6 lanes over to the far right hand lane, and they know we're in the far left. And then they'll use this repetitive hacking to keep bumping us over like bumper cars until we get over in the far right hand, and we're like, well, how did we get here? Well, because this repetitive content can hack your behavior outside your conscious awareness. And if you're not aware that repetitive content is 80% of mind control, and the media is solely there to parrot and instill that repetitive content, you can sort of figure out what's really going on, where they're trying to drive you, and what they're trying to trick you to do. And this shows their weakness as well, because they can only use the psychological manipulation to trick us to enslave ourselves, because they don't have the power to do it by force. So if they don't have the power to do it by force, it means we have the real power. They've tipped their hat
Mhm.
that we have the power. So if we can protect ourselves from the subconscious hacking through the subconscious mind pathway, and understand repetitive content is 80% of all mind control, we can start really picking out the repetitive content throughout the lamestream media and say, this can't be true. And we have to
Yeah.
ask ourselves, for the validating evidence, we have to learn how to think again and know that we've surrounded ourselves with this information based control grid. This is what the censorship is about, because this kind of mind control is about repetition. So they
Hmm.
want to downregulate the repetition that frees our mind, and they want to upregulate the information that forces us to enslave ourselves, because they can't do it by force. They don't have the means. Even if every bullet was emptied out of the full arsenal of every police station and army, there's not enough weaponry to force people to take a knee. They have to use the psychological manipulation to trick us to take a knee ourselves.
Yeah, I'm thinking about some of those great video memes where they show all the news anchors all repeating, saying the same thing, and it zooms out, and they're all saying the same exact thing in a droning voice. And of course, we've seen news articles that are AI driven that all have the same numbers, all the same place that keep popping up, 666 and 33, and all these weird, esoteric, occulted stuff that we know that they're using. So it's there. And I think, a big part is playing into us waking up, stepping out, stop engaging, cut your cable TV off, don't buy the newspaper, look to alternative means of information. Of course, that's a massively important part of it. But still, Jason, I'd love to start getting into now some of your techniques and tactics to help those who are already kind of doing that, because I think a lot of people watching this are already like, hey, I know I shouldn't be watching CNN and engaging in even like obviously mainstream professional sports, Hollywood, cancel your Netflix account, all that stuff we're always talking about. But even beyond that, we're still, I feel like, often playing right into it when we bifurcate and then we start setting up our own subconscious, unconscious prisons within our own awakened community. And it's really about doing the work, right? And I guess this is where we can kind of go into the self sabotage stuff, because I know a lot of people who are really quote unquote awake and are self sabotaging still every day.
Yeah, the solutions are pretty simple. Like, you have to use the same technique. So there isn't any other techniques to hack the subconscious other than the repetitive content.
Okay.
So you're left with a choice between, do you want to be a black magician or do you want to be a white magician? So in order to change your behavior, you have to compete for the top 10% of this list, because it will be acted out in your behavior. And you can't water, like, you need to understand is the choice is simple. You either let these architects of doom, that's what Michael Tessarian calls them, you let the architects of doom control your repetitive content, which means you're just going to poison and indoctrinate yourself back into the Stone Age. Or you can compete for the top 10% of the list. We call this the waterfront property in the subconscious mind, and the machine will act it out. So you have to be in full control of the content that you allow into your eyes. And I mean, that's why there's you know I think there's the pyramid with the eye with the light coming out of it on the back of the US dollar bill, because they know that we can control you through the light, and through the eye we control you. So you have to really control what you see, what you hear, and it has to be in the direction of your dreams. Maybe it's for better relationships. Maybe it's for, you want to be wealthy, not to be wealthy yourself, which is also fun, but you can maybe help more people, start a
Mhm.
retreat. You could rescue people from where they're, you get like Canadian, Australian refugees and help them down to Mexico. Like, and people are doing that. Maybe you want to be healthy. Maybe you want to lose 50 pounds. So you have to really be your own white magician. You have to control the repetitive content that goes into your subconscious mind. And then the machine literally, uh, acts it out. And the best way to get into the subconscious, your conscious mind, if it's active, and it's active when you're in what's called beta brainwave state, if someone tries to tell you, you can lose the weight, or you deserve better, or you can be rich, the conscious mind can actually slap away those ideas, even though it says, I don't deserve it, I'll never be rich, rich people are jerks. Those kind of things won't help get to the top of the list. So when you really want to get to the top of the list, hypnosis is a method of getting into the subconscious mind directly and putting the conscious mind asleep, so that when you do start to dump in, like get a big truck and dump in some positive affirmations, the conscious mind doesn't slap them away. Hypnosis allows the conscious mind sort of put its thumb in its mouth, go to the corner, have a snooze, and then you can just go in, and you literally have direct access to the list. And this will be acted out. And this is what hypnotists do. So the list will be acted out. And that's why, if you can, that's why when a hypnotist works, they will put you into what's trance. So you come out of
Mhm.
beta brainwave state into alpha, and then you can literally put at the top of the list to act like a chicken. And then the machine says, hey, we're in the chicken tribe. For me to be safe in the chicken tribe, I have to act like a chicken. This is exactly what's going on. So the best lady for positive hypnotherapy is a lady called Marissa Peer out of the UK. She was the UK Therapist of the Year about 4 years ago. She's on mindvalley.com too. She got a great program there. Great hypnotherapy to hack the list, and you can't water it down. This is the key. You cannot water the list down. If you watch Bad Moms or Dirty Grandpa or Thor, Infinity Wars, uh, where Thanos kills his own daughter, Gamora. This has huge implications for your list, because these are destructive, negative, violent, depressing, saddening, and emotions can go on the list too. Not only
Mhm.
particulars, patterns can go on the list. So don't screw around with the machine. Don't water down the imprints that you're allowing through your eye. Put in positive podcasts, positive affirmations, positive hypnotherapies. I personally produce positive wall art that I have my clients read 3 times each when they get up, because repetition hacks the subconscious mind. When they get up, they have to read 8 affirmations 3 times each aloud. And when they go to bed, it has to be the same thing. And it literally, they're baffled. But just like the kids in that Justin Williams video, they were baffled too, right? It's called influencing the influencers. Sure, they're baffled, but it's a machine. So if you put positive stuff in, positive stuff comes out. Put it in the direction of your goals, and even watch things like your email address. I was working with one person having a hard time getting ahead, and they sent me their questionnaire, and I said, what's up with your email address? It's like Armageddon 2020. And I said, you have to. And after I explained how this part of the mind works, she says, yeah, like, you don't even have to tell me. I have to change that. I got to change that address. Armageddon 2020 at hotmail.com is not something you want to pound into your computer 2 or 3 times a day, or have it hovering as an email address in the top corner of your page, because your subconscious mind scans the full 180-degree view, not just the central field of view. I remember working with another lady. I said, that painting behind you really gives me the heebie jeebies. And she said, yeah, I picked it up at a Spanish fair, a flea market. It's called The Murder. I said, let me tell you how the subconscious mind really works. Okay. Get rid of,
Oh,
because it doesn't say the murder, but in the subconscious, it knows every time you walk in, it says murder, murder. Like, you can't do it. You cannot do any, this is how the people who rule us build our really unsatisfying and unhappy and violent and addictive lives, is because they trick us to do stuff like we think it's benign. We think our behavior is organic. Just
mhm.
like those kids with the Justin Williams video, they thought their behavior was organic. They thought they thought, oh, I'm really original. I'm pulling the choice of my selfie from the deepest bowels of my intelligence. And Justin Williams like, no, you weren't. No, you're
Yeah.
not. right? And this is what the average person has. The people who rule us know this better than I know this.
Oh yeah.
And
And
this
that's a gut punch to the ego when we have to, acknowledge that because
that's
I
okay.
yeah, and that's a good thing, right? Because obviously now in this woke kind of everybody's the same culture where everybody gets a participation award, kids these days are being raised to believe that they are the most special thing in the world, which is great. I tell my kids that too. You're a unique spark of consciousness, right? But I also ensure that they understand that you got to be self-responsible, and then like we talk about all sorts of these things of that their life can be tough, and you need to work, and you need to strive to be a better person, and all these things. So the participation award cultural mentality, right, is not helping these things because everyone thinks they're so darn special. And that, like you're saying, this influencer culture that has erupted, you see it. And I think it's good to have that gut punch to the ego to realize, oh, hey, well, we are being controlled in many different ways. So let's step out. Let's see how that's happening, and it's time to grow up. Because as we were talking yesterday, I think one of the big problems too in the society is we got a bunch of grown up kids in grown up bodysuits running around completely clueless. I mean, they really are the chickens with their head cut off.
Absolutely, but that's a pattern too. Is this always endorsing another repetitive pattern that's going to be on the top of the list outside people's conscious awareness? Is men acting like children into their adult years. This is the Will Ferrell movies that are repetitive, Adam Sandler movies that are repetitive. The funniest guy is the out of shape guy. He's drunk in the pool. He poops his pants. He flatulence. He's
The
you
Homer
know
Simpson archetype.
yeah, because you can see this, attack on men, which is a very interesting presentation I've done. But you have the Homer Simpson, you have Peter Griffin, but this is repetitive content because the subconscious doesn't know when one show begins and another one ends. It thinks your entire life, whether you're thinking it, whether you're seeing it for real, or whether you're seeing it on a screen, it just represents the tribe that you're in. And you see Peter Griffin and Homer Simpson, and they're buffoons, they're faulty people. And then you see the equivalents even in the Family Guy. Brian, which is a male dog, he's an alcoholic.
And a
And
drug
then
addict. I think there's an episode where he does cocaine.
well, yeah, there is down at the strip joint, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then Stewie is a psychopathic, trying to always murder his own mother, right? I mean, Freud
Yeah.
would have a great time with Stewie. And you can see that this is just content after content after content, where like the King of Queens, right? His wife is very pretty, and then he drives truck, delivery truck, and he's a little overweight. So all the repetitive content is that the men are sloppy, they're weak, they're not real leaders. And then the female equivalents, like Marge doesn't have a beer belly, Lisa in the Simpsons doesn't have a beer belly. um, Peter Griffin's wife, she's shapely. And even the kids, even the young kid in the Family Guy, I don't remember his name, but he's out of shape. He's shaped like a candy
Oh
apple.
yeah.
This is purposely done because it's one of the cogs I like to highlight, is that the attack on men, because a tribe of weak men will always be taken over. I mean, if you don't have the alpha lion on Pride Rock, the hyenas will dominate.
Yep.
And the revenge of the nerds situations is happening right now because the men have the nerds. The revenge of the nerds situation is upon us with the Gates and the Faucis. They're very intelligent. So without, they don't have the muscles to flex. So they were pushed into the darkness of the jungle, and they conspired and said, we're gonna get back at the strong alpha. And we're going to
Interesting.
psychologically manipulate the alpha to feminize himself, to weaken himself, to addict themselves with alcohol, coffee, and other compounds that actually upregulate mind control and hypnosis.
It's interesting too. I was watching a documentary last night talking about how sort of the classical Western male man from the Vikings, the Anglo-Saxons, the Normans, their cultures was able to take over and basically dominate because they stressed the singularity of the individual man being able to basically be the best that he can be over the tribe. And so their idea is they could take 10 masterful men that were super powered in their ability to be the number one and defeat an army of a bunch of group thinkers like the Roman army, because each man was so powerful in his own right. And it worked, and it allowed for this Western civilization to spread across the world. And some would say, well, what has that led to? But it is interesting that that is now being attacked and being destroyed, because that seems like it seems like the correct strategy for life. We're all here on our hero's journey. We should all try to excel to be the very best we can be, and not just be another fat blob in the herd.
Yeah, and this sort of repetitive based mind control that is anti-male, it affects the average person quite a bit. But it's also been proven at the Tavistock Institute, if the human receiving the repetitive content, the mind control and the propaganda, is caffeinated or infused with alcohol, there's a change of brain function where the frontal lobe, which is behind our forehead, shuts off and it activates the limbic system. And that upregulates the propensity to follow the herd, follow the tribe, be reflexively obedient, and obey command. And we can see, like in 1987, Starbucks as a coffee franchise was actually going to go bankrupt with less than 40 stores. And then guess who came and rescued Starbucks from bankruptcy?
I'm going to guess the government.
No, Bill Gates.
Oh, Bill Gates. That's right. The whole Seattle connection and everything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So now we have 36,000 Starbucks across the planet. Caffeine is documented to shut down frontal lobe activity, which is needed for independent thought, high IQ analysis of problems, and the ability to judge long term consequences of your actions. So, as I said, like a watch, it's like, 150 pieces. Coffee or caffeine, your energy drinks, the caffeinated pops. There's 2,000 medications now with caffeine added. And if you want to know the effect of caffeine on brain function and physical health and mental well-being, read the book Caffeine Blues by Stephen Chernisky, and you'll start to understand that it's much more devious than I've described in this short interview. Is that the stores on our streets are there to give us products to change our brain function that makes us more open to mind control. And the
Yeah.
TVs in every living room, the movies are the big highlight. And, our lives are, we're heavily invested financially and time wise in mind controlling ourselves to do things that the ruling class could never do to us by force. So if we could just figure out and get the strength and courage to reprogram our subconscious minds in the way that I'm talking about, we can turn all this around. We
Yeah.
we can have positive outcomes. And all these institutions that are trying to mind control us and control us in various different ways, they are collapsing. And that's why they're trying to corral us into a tighter and tighter pen. But we do have the opportunity to build the institutions that would really benefit us and project our energy out like radio towers, positive energy, wealth, health, abundance, success, evolution, and progression. We can get back to this sort of Atlantis sort of situation. And I think we are getting there.
Yeah, we're running up on time here, but to that note, one of the big themes and ideas in the summit is parallel systems, and really, it seems more and more apparent that some would call them citadels or communities are developing where like-minded people that get this are actually coming together in certain geographical areas and connecting and creating these new ways of being. I know you're down in Mexico. Are you seeing that more? And is this a viable strategy for potentially creating these and doing this entrepreneurial, right? Like in an entrepreneurial way where we can create new businesses that could be the new cafe, for instance, that isn't based on caffeine, but maybe herbal tinctures and have, this is something that Alpha Vedic, the company I'm involved with, have thought to do, brick and mortar places that aren't caffeine, but are like health tonics, but with, and like library of all like really positive, great stuff you can come in and just read. I mean, but do you see that happening and unfolding where you are, or, and what is your final thoughts on building these parallel systems?
Oh, they're being built because they have to be built. The positive mind will always seek these, new institutional, structures out, and it is happening down. I've recently gone down to Mexico. I'll be returning back to North America and then coming back down to Mexico. But definitely, there's a big enclave here. The sun really helps, and I know we're going in the direction that we need and that we deserve. Our brains are powerful. Just be careful what you think and control what you put inside your own mind.
Fantastic. And Jason has given us two gifts that you can access. And one of those is for, like he mentioned, basically learning how to, as a male, regain basically countering the self-sabotage and understanding some of the strategies that the current system's using to demasculine us. And then, of course, we've got a whole package of your wonderful memes that we're offering that people can share, which are empowering. And to be able to access those because you're kicked off, major legacy systems, I think that's great, Jason. And man, such a pleasure speaking with you today. Oh, another thing that we are offering too for all registrants is our goal card, which I think is an important strategy to use, where you can, that Tara Pilling has provided to all our attendees, which is the official The Event goal card, where you are to list your goals for the 2022 and try to really, focus on those to achieve those. So journaling, goal setting, working on gratitude every morning, and then, like you said, repetition. Getting into the repetition of, what your life should be and what your hero's journey should be. So thanks, Jason. Any parting words for the summit?
I think that bonus is very valuable, and it'll teach everybody about mind control, hypnosis, trance, alpha brainwave state, behavior modification, and psychological manipulation. All my programs really focus on that. So again, that's a bonus that you're giving out at the event, and it'll teach you everything you need to know about how your brain is hacked and how you can hack it yourself for better life results.
Beautiful. And if you guys are feeling called to connect with Jason, down below, there is an opt-in where you can join his mailing list. We're collecting that for him. And that way you can also receive more wonderful things from Jason. So please connect with him there. And we thank you. We guys hope you enjoy the summit, continuing to enjoy it. And please keep the chatter going on the, actually, it's this gets always backwards that way to the chat, because we got a running chat right here, Jason. So maybe even Jason, you can pop in there and answer some comments and chat during the summit, because since this is a pre-recording. So thank you guys, and we'll see you the next talk. Cheers.